Ancient civilizations achieved technological marvels that should not have been possible. We will uncover 27 mysterious inventions and constructions that defy our historical timeline. By the end, you will see human history in a completely new light. How did a 2,000-year-old device predict planetary movements with gear systems more advanced than anything for a millennium? Why does a Roman concrete structure stand stronger today than modern buildings? What does all this lost knowledge reveal about our own technological path? Are we truly the most advanced civilization to have ever existed in the quiet depths off the Greek island of Antikythera? A team of sponge divers surfaced with a story no one would believe. It was the year 1901, and their search for marine life had led them to a far greater treasure, the ghost of an ancient Roman shipwreck. Among the statues and pottery, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood that seemed utterly unremarkable. For decades, it sat in a museum, a curious but misunderstood artifact. Then, researchers took a closer look. This unassuming lump, now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. X-ray and advanced imaging technology eventually peeled back the layers of time, revealing a complex clockwork device of precisely cut bronze gears. Dating to around 100 years before the Common Era, this was an astronomical calculator of breathtaking sophistication. Its intricate dials and pointers could predict the movements of the sun, the moon, and known planets. It could forecast lunar and solar eclipses and even track the timing of ancient athletic games. At its heart was a system of interlocking gears, including a differential gear, a technology so advanced that historians believed it was not invented until the 16th century. That is a gap of over 1,600 years. How could such knowledge have existed, only to vanish completely? The mechanism stands as a silent, stunning rebuke to the linear timeline of human progress, forcing us to ask what other brilliant minds and their creations were lost to the relentless march of time. That same ghost of forgotten genius appears in a far more humble form, a simple clay jar. In 1936, while excavating an ancient village near Baghdad, workers uncovered a collection of these peculiar parts. Each one was sealed with asphalt and contained a copper cylinder, and within that cylinder, an iron rod. The artifacts were dated to the Pantheon period, around 2,000 years ago. At first glance, they seemed like nothing more than odd storage containers, perhaps for sacred scrolls, but a curious detail caught the eye of researchers. The iron rods showed distinct signs of corrosion, not from simple rust but from an acidic agent. A theory began to form, one that seemed impossible. When modern scientists reconstructed these jars and filled them with an electrolyte like vinegar or grape juice, something incredible happened. The devices produced a small but consistent electrical current. They were, in essence, ancient batteries. The basic principle was sound. The acidic liquid acted as an electrolyte, creating a chemical reaction between the copper and the iron, generating a flow of electrons or electricity. This was a rudimentary galvanic cell, a technology whose official invention is credited to Alessandro Volta in the year 1800. That is a gap in our historical record of nearly 2 millennia. So what were these Baghdad batteries actually used for? The most compelling theory suggests they were employed for electroplating, the process of depositing a thin layer of one metal, like gold, onto the surface of another, like silver. This would explain the existence of exquisitely gilded ancient artifacts that show no signs of being hammered or soldered. Other possibilities are just as fascinating. Perhaps the gentle, mysterious current was used in medical treatments, a form of ancient pain therapy. Or maybe it served a religious purpose, creating a tingling sensation for priests in temples to simulate a divine touch. While we may never know their exact purpose with certainty, the existence of these jars is undeniable. They stand as a quiet, powerful testament to a different kind of ancient knowledge, not of astronomy and gears, but of the invisible forces that power our modern world. Perhaps the most humbling monument to this lost knowledge is not a small, intricate device, but a vast and open space. In the heart of Rome stands the Pantheon, a building that has defied time itself. Its colossal dome, spanning 142 feet, remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. It was completed around the year 128 under Emperor Hadrian, and has weathered nearly 2 millennia without a single crack forcing its closure. Walk inside and you stand beneath a perfect hemisphere of ancient engineering, a feat that modern concrete structures, often crumbling after just 50 years, cannot match. So what was the secret ingredient in this Roman superconcrete? The answer lies in a revolutionary recipe. While we use Portland cement today, Roman engineers mixed lime with volcanic ash, specifically from the Pozzuoli region, and chunks of volcanic rock. This combination, known as a pozzolanic reaction, was their magic. They did not just use any water either. For marine constructions, they deliberately used seawater. For centuries, we assumed this was a primitive choice, but modern science has revealed it was a stroke of genius. When researchers used advanced imaging to examine samples of Roman harbor concrete, they discovered something astonishing. The saltwater had triggered a slow chemical reaction within the material, causing the growth of rare, interlocking minerals like aluminum tobermorite. These crystals act like tiny, reinforcing fibers, preventing cracks from spreading. Even more incredible, when seawater seeps into a new crack, it reactivates the process, forming new crystals that effectively heal the wound. This concrete does not just endure, it grows stronger with age. We are only now beginning to decode this 2,000-year-old technology, racing to recreate a self-healing concrete that could revolutionize our own infrastructure. Its existence forces a difficult question. How could a formula so resilient, so beneficial, simply vanish from the architectural record for over 1,000 years? The Pantheon does not just shelter visitors from the rain, it shelters a profound mystery, a silent challenge from the past to our own assumptions of superiority. Those self-healing walls of Roman concrete speak of a forgotten material science, a theme echoed not in architecture, but in the deadly elegance of a warrior's blade. Medieval crusaders marching into the Holy Land brought with them the finest steel Europe could produce. They met opponents armed with swords of legend, blades that could reportedly slice a silk scarf floating in the air, or cleave a European knight's helmet and the skull beneath it in a single, devastating blow. These were the swords of Damascus, named for the great Syrian city that became a center of their trade. Their surfaces shimmered with a characteristic watery or ladder-like pattern, a mesmerizing visual signature that hinted at the incredible strength within. These were not just weapons, they were masterpieces of metallurgy, produced for over 1,000 years and seemingly impossible to replicate today. Their secret began not in the forges of the Middle East, but in the crucibles of ancient India. There, artisans created a unique form of high-carbon steel known as woots. This steel was produced in small, cake-like ingots, which were then traded across the world. When a Damascus swordsmith acquired a woots ingot, the true magic began. Through a painstaking and precisely controlled process of heating, hammering, and most critically, a very slow cooling cycle, the smith would forge the blade. This process did not simply shape the metal, it manipulated its very crystalline structure. The result was a steel that embodied a perfect paradox, it was both incredibly hard and remarkably flexible. A blade that could hold a razor-sharp edge through brutal combat, yet would not shatter upon impact. For centuries, the source of this legendary performance was a complete mystery. Then modern scientists placed samples under electron microscopes. What they discovered was breathtaking. The distinctive patterns on the surface were not merely decorative, they were the visible evidence of a microscopic wonderland. The steel contained carbon nanotubes and nanowires of an ultra-hard material called cementite. These microscopic structures, engineered over 2 millennia ago, acted as a natural reinforcement, giving the blade its peerless combination of hardness and resilience. It was a nanotechnology created by fire, hammer, and an unknowing mastery of atomic structures. The knowledge required to consistently produce this effect, however, was tied to the specific composition of the original Indian ores and the exact secret techniques of the smiths. When the supply chains were disrupted and the master smiths faded away, the formula was lost. Despite our advanced science and countless attempts, no one has ever fully reproduced the authentic Damascus steel of old. We can analyze its components, we can see its microscopic genius, but we cannot remake it. The sword is more than a relic. It is a ghost in the machine of history, a perfect piece of a technological puzzle we can no longer solve. Another ghost of ancient warfare haunts the pages of history, not in steel or stone, but in fire. The Byzantine Empire's survival often hinged on a terrifying, almost supernatural weapon known as Greek fire. Picture the scene: Arab fleets surrounding the great city of Constantinople, their wooden ships packed with warriors ready for conquest. Then, from the Byzantine Droman warships, a terrifying spectacle unfolded. A stream of liquid fire shot through the air, not from a catapult or a simple torch, but from a pressurized bronze tube operated by a crew of specialized operators. This was no ordinary flame. Upon striking the water, it did not sizzle and die, it erupted, clinging to the wooden hulls and the sea itself, creating an inescapable inferno that water could not quench. In fact, dousing it with water only made the flames burn more fiercely. Developed around the year 672, this weapon became the empire's ultimate naval shield, a closely guarded state secret that secured its maritime dominance for over 5 centuries. So what was this mysterious substance that defied the very element it was used upon? Contemporary accounts provide clues, but the full recipe died with the Byzantine emperors and the chemists who served them. The base was almost certainly a form of crude petroleum, similar to modern naphtha, likely sourced from natural oil seeps around the Black Sea. But the true secret ingredient was a chemical cocktail that created its unique properties. Historians and chemists theorize it may have contained quicklime, a substance that ignites spontaneously when it contacts water or other volatile compounds like saltpeter or sulfur. This mixture was not just poured, it was engineered to be projected. The Byzantines used a complex system of bronze siphons, heated cauldrons, and pumps to create a pressurized spray, turning their ships into the ancient equivalent of flamethrowers. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical damage. Imagine being a sailor facing a wall of fire that burned on water, a force that seemed more like divine punishment than human invention. The technological leap this represents is staggering. This was not simple alchemy, it was advanced chemical engineering, a mastery of volatile substances and their delivery systems that would not be seen again until the battlefields of the 20th century. Its existence forces us to reconsider the scope of ancient science. What other formulas for destruction, or perhaps for creation, were locked away in imperial vaults and lost forever when those empires fell? The terror of Greek fire was a secret held by a few, But another mystery from the medieval world was created to be seen, yet never understood. In the year 1912, a rare book dealer named Wilfred Voynich made the purchase of a lifetime, acquiring a single enigmatic codex. This was no ordinary manuscript. Its 240 vellum pages were filled from edge to edge with a flowing, unknown script, a language or cipher that has resisted every attempt at translation for over a century. Alongside the text are bizarre, vivid illustrations that only deepen the mystery. There are delicate drawings of plants that do not exist, their roots and leaves unlike any known species on Earth. There are astronomical diagrams featuring stars arranged in constellations we cannot identify, and pages filled with intricate drawings of tiny, naked women bathing in a system of interconnected green pools. Carbon dating firmly places its creation between 1404 and 1438, a product of the European Renaissance, yet its contents feel utterly alien to that time. The best cryptographers of the 20th century, the very men and women who broke Nazi codes, have turned their minds to this book and failed. Linguists have analyzed its patterns, finding that the script has a structure that mimics language, with word lengths and character repetition that suggest meaning, but it does not match the grammar or syntax of any tongue, living or dead. Advanced statistical analysis confirms this, showing linguistic properties that are both coherent and completely unnatural. So what is the Voynich Manuscript? Is it an elaborate, meaningless hoax crafted to deceive a wealthy patron? The sheer cost and effort of producing such a detailed book on vellum makes this seem unlikely. Is it a coded record of genuine, lost botanical and astronomical knowledge, perhaps from a tradition so obscure it left no other trace? Could it be a pharmacopoeia of unknown herbs, or a treatise on an alternative system of medicine symbolized by those bathing nymphs? Every theory eventually collapses under the weight of its own improbability. This book is a locked door in the library of human history. We can see the door, we can study its grain and its ironwork, but the key has been lost for 600 years. It stands as a silent, beautiful, and deeply frustrating reminder that some of our past may be written in a language we have simply forgotten how to read. While mysterious manuscripts were being penned in Europe, an entire library of images was being drawn on the floor of a Peruvian desert. The Nazca Lines are not hidden artifacts, they are colossal artworks etched into the very skin of the earth, so vast they can only be truly comprehended from the sky. Scattered across the Nazca Desert are hundreds of geoglyphs, immense figures of spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, and whales, some stretching over 900 feet long. These were not created in a single generation, but over a 1,000-year period, beginning around 500 years before the Common Era. From the ground, they appear as shallow grooves in the reddish gravel, but from above, they transform into a breathtaking gallery of precision and scale. This fact alone ignites the central mystery. How, and more importantly why, did a people without powered flight create art that demanded an aerial perspective for its full appreciation? Recent archaeological experiments have shown that the Nazca people possessed the simple technology to achieve this feat. Using ropes attached to central stakes, teams could have acted as human compasses, scraping away the dark surface gravel to reveal the lighter-colored earth beneath. They could have constructed straight lines over hills and valleys using a series of sighting posts. This practical explanation, however, only deepens the wonder. The true marvel is not the method, but the execution. The proportions of these animal figures are mathematically perfect, their long, sweeping lines remaining straight and true for miles across an uneven, rugged landscape. This implies a sophisticated understanding of geometry and spatial planning that we rarely attribute to ancient cultures of the region. The purpose of these monumental efforts remains one of history's great puzzles. Were they ritual pathways walked by priests during sacred ceremonies? Were they astronomical calendars aligning with celestial events? Or were they, as some daringly speculate, messages intended not for human eyes but for gods in the sky? Their enduring legacy is a testament to another kind of genius, an environmental one. The Nazca people understood their hyper-arid world intimately. They created a self-preserving canvas by removing just the right layer of rock, allowing the lines to be protected from the wind for 2,000 years. This was not an accident, it was a profound manipulation of a fragile ecosystem. The lines do not ask us how they were made, but why a civilization would invest such immense, communal effort into a message only the horizon and time could properly read. High above the desert plains of Peru, the Nazca Lines pose their silent question to the heavens, a testament to the human drive to map our world onto the cosmos. That same drive, channeled through a different kind of genius, flourished in the jungles of Central America. Deep within a ceremonial chamber, a Mayan astronomer priest tracked the slow dance of the stars across the night sky. His tools not lenses and equations, but meticulously kept codices and a mind trained to see patterns invisible to the common eye. This was not mere stargazing, it was a high science, one that produced astronomical calculations of breathtaking accuracy long before the telescope was ever conceived. Their greatest surviving text, the Dresden Codex, contains tables for the movement of the planet Venus, so precise they are accurate to within a single day over a 500-year cycle. Imagine the depth of observation required to achieve that, watching the heavens night after night, generation after generation, to discern a pattern so reliable it could predict the future position of a world millions of miles away. They did the same for the moon, creating tables that could predict lunar eclipses with a sophistication that Europe would not match for centuries. This was all built upon a mathematical foundation that was, in its own way, as revolutionary as any gear or engine. The Maya developed the concept of zero independently, a philosophical and numerical leap that freed them from the limitations of simpler counting systems. With this powerful tool, they constructed a calendar more accurate than the Julian calendar used in Europe at the very same time. Their long count calendar was a complex interlocking of cycles, a grand cosmic clockwork that measured time with a precision that still inspires awe. But their knowledge was not confined to parchment. They built their understanding into the very stones of their cities. At Chichen Itza, during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a shadow down the steps of the Great Pyramid El Castillo, creating the undulating illusion of a giant serpent slithering from the heavens to the earth. This was no happy accident, it was a meticulously engineered alignment, a permanent celestial marker proving that their astronomy was not abstract, but lived and breathed within their architecture. How could a civilization isolated from the rest of the world achieve such feats of cosmic observation? Their legacy forces us to expand our definition of technology beyond metal and mechanics, to include the pure, formidable power of a mind that learned to measure eternity itself. The same cosmic precision that guided the Maya is set in stone on a scale that defies belief. Rising from the Giza Plateau, the Great Pyramid stands as a monument not just to pharaohs, but to an almost inconceivable feat of human organization. Its construction involved quarrying, transporting, and precisely placing around 2.3 million stone blocks, each one averaging 2.5 tons. To put that weight into perspective, that is like lifting a full-grown rhinoceros and then doing it again 2 million more times. The sheer logistics are staggering, requiring a workforce of thousands, fed and housed for decades, all working in a coordinated symphony of labor. For centuries, the dominant image has been of endless lines of slaves dragging these monstrous stones up massive earthen ramps. but that theory is crumbling. Recent archaeological work has uncovered compelling evidence of a very different system. Researchers now believe the builders used an internal, spiraling ramp, a corridor built within the pyramid's own growing structure. This would have allowed workers to haul stones upward from within, a far more efficient and stable method than an external ramp that would have required an unimaginable volume of material itself. The transport to the site presents another puzzle solved by clever engineering. We now have evidence that the Egyptians used the annual flooding of the Nile to their supreme advantage. They dug canals right to the base of the plateau, floating the giant stone blocks on barges for much of the journey, turning an impossible land drag into a manageable waterborne task. Yet the how is only half the mystery. The why reveals an even deeper knowledge. The pyramid's sides are aligned to the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, with an error of less than 1/15 of a single degree. This is not just roughly north. This is a precision that would be challenging to achieve today without advanced tools. Even more astonishing are its mathematical properties. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its original height equals 2 times pi. This means the builders encoded the fundamental relationship between a circle's radius and its circumference into the very shape of a square-based pyramid. This was not a coincidence, it was a deliberate act, a testament to a geometrical understanding so advanced it whispers of a lost science. This structure has outlasted empires, its core still standing strong after 4,500 years. It forces us to look past the brute force of its scale and see the brilliant, meticulous mind behind it, a mind whose methods we are only just beginning to fully comprehend. Even the Great Pyramid's perfect angles could not withstand the violent shudders of an earthquake as well as a simple stone wall. High in the Andes, the Incas built for a world in motion. Their citadels, like Machu Picchu and the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, are not merely ruins, they are living demonstrations of a lost engineering art. The walls are composed of colossal, irregularly shaped polygonal stones, some weighing over 100 tons, that fit together like pieces of an immense three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The joints between these stones are so impossibly tight that you cannot force a razor blade or even a single sheet of paper into the seams, and yet they used no mortar whatsoever. This is dry stone construction at its most sublime. The genius of this technique goes far beyond a perfect fit. The Incas designed these walls to be seismically active. When an earthquake strikes, the ground does not move as a single, solid block. It shakes in complex, wave-like motions. A rigid, mortared wall would crack and crumble under this stress. But an Inca wall dances. The irregular, interlocking stones, with their slightly convex faces and inward-leaning angles, allow the entire structure to flex and shift during a tremor. The stones literally bounce and resettle, absorbing the energy and dispersing it safely throughout the wall, often without a single stone being dislodged. This is an understanding of seismic dynamics that our own modern engineers are only now fully appreciating. How they achieved this perfection with only stone hammers and bronze tools, materials softer than the granite they were shaping, is a mystery that humbles us. The transportation of these stones is another puzzle carved from the mountains themselves. Without the wheel or strong draft animals, they moved 100-ton blocks across treacherous, steep terrain. The prevailing theory suggests they used a combination of earthen ramps, log rollers, and sheer human power, with thousands of workers pulling on ropes made from woven plant fibers. The sound must have been immense, a chorus of grinding stone and coordinated effort echoing through the valleys. The final product, however, is silent, a testament to a technology that sought not to conquer nature, but to move in harmony with its most powerful forces. In their seamless walls, we see more than just shelter. We see a conversation with the earth itself. That same sense of moving in harmony with nature defined another group of legendary seafarers, the Vikings. While the Inca mastered the solid earth, the Norse learned to navigate the featureless sea under a featureless sky. Their secret weapon was not a tool of metal, but of crystal. Viking sagas speak of a mysterious solarstein, a sunstone, used to locate the sun's position on completely overcast days, even when it was hidden below the horizon. For a long time, this was dismissed as mere myth, a poetic metaphor. Then, archaeologists excavating a 16th-century English shipwreck found something extraordinary. Amid the wreckage lay a clear, rectangular crystal of Icelandic spar, a form of calcite carefully placed where the ship's navigator would have worked. This was the first physical evidence that the legends were true. So how could a simple piece of rock reveal the sun's location through solid cloud cover? The answer lies in a subtle property of light that our own eyes cannot see. Sunlight, even when diffused by clouds, becomes polarized, meaning its light waves vibrate in a specific direction relative to the sun's position. A crystal like Icelandic spar is birefringent, a technical term meaning it splits a single beam of light into two separate beams. By holding such a crystal up to the sky and rotating it, a navigator would watch for a change in the brightness or the alignment of these twin beams. At a certain orientation, the crystal would appear to glow with an even light pointing directly toward the hidden sun. This was not a vague guess, it was a precise measurement. Modern researchers have tested this method under real-world conditions and found it staggeringly effective. Using a sunstone, a skilled navigator could pinpoint the sun's location with an accuracy within a single degree, even at twilight. This level of precision was enough to guide their longships across the treacherous North Atlantic, reaching Iceland, Greenland, and even the shores of North America centuries before Columbus and long before the magnetic compass became commonplace in Europe. This was not magic, it was an intuitive, brilliant application of optical physics. It reveals a Viking world far more sophisticated than the popular image of mere raiders, a culture with a deep, practical understanding of the natural world that allowed them to conquer the greatest wilderness of all, the open ocean. While Viking navigators read the hidden sun in a crystal, a Chinese inventor devised a way to hear the silent footsteps of the earth itself. In the year 132 of the Common Era, a court official named Zhang Heng unveiled a device that must have seemed like something from mythology. It was a magnificent bronze vessel adorned with 8 dragon heads, each one poised above the open mouth of a corresponding bronze toad. The sight alone was awe-inspiring, but its function was truly miraculous. When an earthquake struck even hundreds of miles away, one of the dragons would release a heavy bronze ball from its jaws, clattering decisively into the toad's mouth below. The court could then know not only that a quake had happened, but also, by seeing which dragon had released its ball, the general direction from which the tremors had come. Historical records tell of it detecting a quake no one at the capital had felt, with confirmation arriving by messenger days later. So how could a 2,000-year-old device sense what human beings could not? The secret was hidden inside the ornate vessel. While the exact mechanism is lost, the most accepted theory points to an inverted pendulum. Picture a heavy mass suspended loosely from the top of the vessel. When subtle seismic waves, the ones that travel vast distances before any shaking is felt, reach the device, this internal pendulum would swing. It would act like a sophisticated internal lever, tripping a mechanism that released just one of the balls. This was not magic, it was brilliant mechanical filtering. The device was sensitive to the specific directional waves of a distant quake. while remaining stable against the jarring of carts in the street or the rumble of a nearby celebration. Modern engineers have built reconstructions based on this principle, and they work with startling accuracy. This means that nearly 18 centuries before the modern seismograph was developed in Europe, Zhang Heng had not only conceived of earthquake detection, but had also mastered the physics of directional wave motion. His seismoscope stands as a lonely pinnacle, a device of such elegant insight that it would have no equal for over a millennium. It forces us to wonder how many other brilliant instruments, born from a single mind, were lost before their time could ever come again. Standing in the heart of Delhi for 16 centuries, a 7-meter-tall iron pillar defies the very laws of nature. While modern steel structures require constant painting and maintenance to fight a relentless battle against rust, this ancient monument has simply stood, its glossy, dark surface enduring monsoon rains and scorching heat with an almost supernatural resilience. Forged during the golden age of the Gupta Empire around the year 400, it is a testament to a lost metallurgical art. The secret to its longevity was not a magical coating or a sheltered location, but something far more brilliant, a perfect recipe locked within the iron itself. Modern metallurgical analysis has revealed that the pillar possesses a unique chemical signature. It contains an unusually high amount of phosphorus and a critically low amount of sulfur. This specific combination was the key. The high phosphorus content, combined with the iron and oxygen in the air, promoted the formation of a thin, invisible, and remarkably stable layer called a passive film. This film, only a few molecules thick, acts as a protective shield, preventing moisture and oxygen from reacting with the iron beneath to form rust. It is a self-healing barrier, a form of ancient nanotechnology that has protected the pillar for over 1,600 years. Yet this knowledge of chemistry pales before the mystery of its creation. The pillar was not cast as a single piece, but was masterfully constructed through a process called forge welding. Indian blacksmiths heated multiple pieces of iron to a white-hot temperature and then hammered them together into a single, seamless column. The temperature control required for this feat is something modern engineers struggle to replicate without precise, computer-controlled furnaces. A few degrees too cool and the pieces would not bond. A few degrees too hot and the high phosphorus iron would become brittle and shatter. This was a dance with fire performed to perfection. This single pillar represents a pinnacle of corrosion resistance that Western science would not begin to formally understand until the 20th century. How could such a precise and advanced understanding of material science arise, only to vanish from common practice? It stands not as a rusting relic, but as a polished challenge, a quiet question mark in the history of human invention. Centuries before the whirring machinery of the Industrial Revolution, a different kind of steam was rising in ancient Alexandria. Inside his workshop, the inventor hero demonstrated a device that seemed to belong to a future millennium. He called it an eolipile. Its design was deceptively simple, a hollow metal sphere mounted between two pivots with two bent tubes protruding from it. As water in the base was heated, steam rushed through the tubes and shot out of the nozzles, causing the entire sphere to spin with surprising force. This was not just a curious toy, it was the world's first documented steam turbine, a practical demonstration of the reaction principle that would one day propel jet engines and power plants. Hero and his fellow scholars understood the raw power contained within steam, yet this knowledge remained largely confined to the realm of wonders and temple miracles. He engineered automated doors that swung open as if by magic when a priest lit a fire, using heated air to displace water and counterweights. He built the first known coin-operated vending machine, dispensing holy water in exchange for a coin. These were not crude contraptions, but sophisticated applications of pneumatics and pressure, proving a deep grasp of physics that was clearly within their reach. So why did the streets of Rome never rumble with steam-powered carts? Why did no factories rise along the Nile, driven by these very principles? The answer lies not in a lack of intelligence, but in a surplus of labor. In a world built on the backs of slaves and cheap manpower, there was simply no economic incentive to invest in developing costly and complex steam technology. A machine to do the work of 100 men was a fascinating thought experiment, but it was far cheaper and easier to simply use 100 men. The genius of Hero and his peers was channeled into divine spectacle and philosophical demonstration, not industrial revolution. The Aeolipile spins as a haunting symbol of a path not taken, a brilliant flash of technological potential that flickered out because the society around it had no pressing need to fan it into a flame. While Hero's steam turbine spun as a marvel without a market, another civilization was solving a problem fundamental to its survival. In the scorching heart of the Persian desert, where summer temperatures could melt resolve as easily as they melted flesh, people enjoyed a luxury that seemed impossible: ice. They did not mine it from distant mountains. They manufactured and stored it right in the heart of the arid landscape using structures known as yachtals. These massive, beehive-shaped domes of mud brick were not just simple storage pits. They were sophisticated evaporative coolers, a testament to an ancient mastery of passive thermodynamics. The process began on cold winter nights. Canals called qanats brought water from underground aquifers to shallow, shaded pools. There, the frigid desert air would freeze the water into sheets of ice. Before the sun could reclaim it, workers would harvest this ice and transport it deep into the subterranean chambers of the yachtal. The structure itself was a masterpiece of environmental engineering. Its thick mud brick walls provided incredible insulation, but the true genius lay in its wind catcher. This was a tall, chimney-like tower that captured any passing breeze and funneled it down into the storage pit. As the air descended, it was cooled by the ice and the earth itself, creating a perpetual cycle of cold air that settled at the bottom while the warmer air was pushed up and out. The seal on this natural refrigerator was a special mortar known as sarouj, a mixture of sand, clay, egg whites, lime, and goat hair that was not only incredibly strong but also highly water-resistant, providing an airtight barrier against the oppressive heat. The result was a deep freeze in the desert. Inside a yachtal, temperatures could remain below freezing even as the world outside baked. This was not a rare technology. These structures were common across ancient Persia from around 400 years before the Common Era, allowing civilizations to preserve food, create chilled delicacies, and even make frozen desserts. It was a form of refrigeration so effective and accessible that it would not be matched in the Western world for centuries. The yachtal does not ask us to marvel at a lone genius, but at a society that wove advanced physics into the very fabric of daily life, turning the harsh elements of their world into tools for comfort and survival. Deep beneath the earth, the quest for salt drove an industrial revolution 2,000 years ahead of its time. During the Han Dynasty, around 200 years before the Common Era, Chinese engineers were not merely digging shallow pits, they were punching boreholes deep into the planet's crust. Their tools were not steel and diesel, but bamboo and relentless human ingenuity. They constructed towering derricks from lashed bamboo, creating rigs that could reach staggering depths of over 3,000 feet, a vertical mile into the darkness. The method was percussion drilling, a technique of stunning efficiency. A heavy iron bit was suspended from a bamboo cable, and a team of workers would jump on a lever again and again, sending the bit crashing down to pulverize the rock below. It was a brutal, rhythmic dance that could continue for years, sinking a single well. But the true brilliance lay in the solutions to the problems this process created. How do you keep a deep, narrow hole from collapsing? They invented casing using hollowed-out bamboo trunks joined together to line the borehole, shielding it from cave-ins. How do you extract the debris? They developed a specialized bailer, a long tube with a valve at the bottom that would be lowered down to scoop up the pulverized rock and water. And when they finally struck their target, it was not always water. They often hit pockets of natural gas, a dangerous and mysterious force. With a courage we can scarcely comprehend, they harnessed it. They channeled the invisible, flammable gas through bamboo pipelines, running it directly to evaporation pans where brine was boiled away to leave behind precious salt. This was not a one-off experiment, it was a systematic, large-scale industry. They were using fossil fuels to power a manufacturing process centuries before the term was even coined. The entire operation, from the deep drilling to the pressurized gas transport, represents a chain of technology that would not be replicated in the West until the Pennsylvania oil boom of the 19th century. That is a technological gap of nearly 2 millennia. This was not primitive hole digging, it was sophisticated subterranean engineering, a testament to a society that looked deep below and saw not just rock but possibility. A Roman battlefield surgeon's kit contained tools that would look perfectly at home in a modern operating theater. Among the artifacts recovered from sites like Pompeii and military hospitals across the empire are finely balanced scalpels with replaceable steel blades, intricate bone drills, delicate forceps for extracting arrowheads, and even vaginal speculums with sophisticated screw mechanisms for dilation. The craftsmanship is breathtaking, but the true genius lies in their application. These were not crude implements for amputation alone. They were instruments of precision, designed for procedures of astonishing complexity. Roman medical texts, such as those by the physician Galen, describe in meticulous detail the process of cataract surgery. A sharp needle, called a specillum, would be carefully inserted into the eye to physically displace the clouded lens, restoring a patient's sight. They performed lithotomies for bladder stones, developed specialized tools for trepanning the skull, and even recorded early attempts at reconstructive plastic surgery to repair damaged ears and noses. This was not mere butchery, it was a refined science. Perhaps most striking of all was their profound, if incomplete, understanding of a concept that would baffle medicine for 1,500 more years: infection control. They did not know about germs, but through observation and experience, they knew that cleaning wounds and instruments prevented disease. They advocated for the sterilization of tools in boiling water and the use of antiseptic substances like vinegar and acetone to wash wounds. This practice of maintaining a clean field, a cornerstone of modern surgery, was a standard Roman military protocol. How could such a systematic approach to medicine, combining advanced mechanical design with a clear grasp of hygiene, simply vanish from common practice for over a millennium? These gleaming bronze tools are more than relics. They are silent witnesses to a path of medical progress that was tragically abandoned, leaving humanity to rediscover, at a terrible cost, what the Romans had already learned. 800 years before the Common Era, an Assyrian artisan might have held a small piece of rock crystal, carefully grinding it into a convex oval. Discovered in the ruins of the ancient palace at Nimrud, this object, now known as the Nimrud Lens, is a lump of crystal that has been ground into a shape capable of focusing light. It is not a crude ornament, but a carefully crafted optical device. When held at the right distance, it can magnify small objects or concentrate the harsh Mesopotamian sun into a pinpoint of intense heat. This was no accident of nature. The lens has a focal length of about 12 centimeters and could magnify roughly 3 times. The precision of its grinding reveals a deliberate understanding of how light behaves when passing through a curved, transparent material, a principle we formally call refraction. Was this lens used by a master craftsman to inspect intricate seal carvings or delicate jewelry? Could it have been a tool for an elder or a scribe whose failing eyesight needed aid to continue their work? Or was its purpose more primal, a reliable means to kindle a flame without the need for flint and tinder? The debate over its single purpose, however, obscures a far more profound implication. The skill required to produce such a lens, to shape rock crystal with such symmetrical curvature, represents a lapidary art that would not become commonplace in Europe until the rise of the Renaissance nearly 2,000 years later. This single artifact, resting quietly in a museum case, suggests that the spark of optical science was kindled not in the workshops of 17th century Europe, but in the sun-baked cities of the ancient Middle East. It forces us to wonder how many other such lenses were made, used, and lost, and what other secrets of light and sight were understood by civilizations we still consider primitive. Its guiding light was a landmark for 1,000 years, a beacon of ancient ingenuity rising from an island at the edge of the Nile Delta. The Pharaohs of Alexandria was not merely a tower, it was a skyscraper of the classical world, soaring to a height of approximately 350 feet. For centuries, it remained one of the tallest structures ever built by human hands, a marvel of masonry that dominated the skyline and guided ships safely into the busiest port of the ancient world. Completed around 280 years before the Common Era, its fame spread so wide that the very word pharaohs became the root for lighthouse in numerous languages. But its true genius was not in its height alone, but in the sophisticated optical system it housed at its summit. Ancient accounts describe a massive, polished bronze mirror, a device of such clever design that it could reflect and intensify the sun's rays during the day, creating a brilliant signal visible for dozens of miles out to sea. As dusk fell, the keepers would light a great furnace, and this same mirror would then project the fire's light far across the dark waters, a steady, burning star for mariners to steer by. The engineering behind this is staggering to contemplate. The mirror was not a simple sheet of metal, it was likely a complex array of polished surfaces, perhaps even an early form of parabolic reflector designed to focus the light into a powerful beam. The logistics of its operation were just as impressive. Imagine the constant supply of fuel, likely wood or even naphtha, hauled up the tower's spiraling ramp. Consider the team of keepers who maintained the mirror's perfect polish against the corrosive sea air and who precisely angled it to maximize its reach. This was not a simple bonfire on a hill, it was a precise and relentless machine for producing light. The structure itself, built on a foundation that had to withstand the constant pounding of waves, demonstrates a mastery of coastal engineering that would challenge modern builders. For a millennium, the pharaohs stood as a silent promise of safe harbor, a testament to a civilization that could harness fire and metal to bend light itself to its will. Its eventual collapse into the sea feels like a profound loss, as if a great eye looking out from the ancient world has finally closed. While the Incas built walls that danced with earthquakes, they also sculpted the very mountains to feed their empire. High in the Andes, they looked at near vertical slopes and saw not barren rock but potential farmland. They transformed these impossible angles into a cascading staircase of green, a masterpiece of agricultural engineering known as terrace farming. These were not simple flat steps cut into a hill, they were complex, layered ecosystems. Each terrace was a self-contained unit, built with a stone retaining wall that did far more than just hold back the earth. These walls absorbed the heat of the high-altitude sun during the day, and then, as the frigid night air descended, they would slowly radiate that stored warmth, creating a protective thermal blanket that shielded delicate crops from deadly frost. This was passive climate control carved from stone, but the true genius of these systems lay beneath the surface, invisible to the eye. The Incas constructed intricate underground drainage channels that ran through the terraces like arteries. These channels performed a delicate balancing act, allowing excess water from heavy rains to flow away without causing erosion, while simultaneously ensuring that just enough moisture was retained in the soil to sustain the plants. They engineered the soil itself, layering it with gravel and sand for drainage, and topping it with rich, fertile loam. This deep understanding of hydrology and soil science created microclimates, small pockets of environmental perfection that could support a stunning variety of crops, from potatoes and maize to quinoa, at altitudes of up to 13,000 feet. In these thin mountain airs where modern industrial agriculture often fails, the Inca system thrived for centuries, supporting populations in the millions without depleting the land. It was a technology of profound sustainability, one that worked in harmony with the forces of nature rather than fighting against them. We are only now, with our advanced soil sensors and climate models, beginning to understand the full sophistication of what they achieved. The whirring gears of the Antikythera Mechanism were not a solitary anomaly in the ancient world. They were part of a vibrant tradition of mechanical arts, a culture of invention that dreamed of automated servants and living statues. In the writings of engineers like Philo of Byzantium and Heron of Alexandria, we find meticulous blueprints for a world powered by clever physics. They described entire automated theaters where tiny mechanical figures performed a complete play. Through a complex, preset sequence of weights, ropes, and rotating drums, these automata could move across a stage, act out a scene, and even create sound effects like thunder, all without a single human hand touching them. One of Heron's designs was a temple that would open its doors automatically when a fire was lit on its altar, using heated air to displace water and trigger a system of weights and pulleys. Another was a mechanical wine pourer, a servant made of metal that would dispense a measured amount of wine mixed with water. These were not just simple levers, they were programmable machines. The sequence of actions was determined by the arrangement of knots on a rope, the placement of pegs on a rotating drum, or the careful timing of falling weights. This was a form of analog programming, a physical code that instructed the machine on what to do and when to do it. The principles are eerily similar to the punch cards that would control the first looms of the Industrial Revolution. Yet for the Greeks, this genius was channeled into spectacle and ritual, not mass production. These inventions were wonders for temples and royal courts, demonstrations of philosophical mastery over nature rather than tools for economic transformation. The fact that we know of them only from surviving texts, while the devices themselves have crumbled into dust, is a poignant reminder of a path not taken. It suggests a technological culture that had all the necessary pieces, a deep understanding of mechanics, gearing, and even basic programming, but lacked the social and economic spark to assemble them into a world-changing revolution. Zhou Song's clock tower rose over 30 feet into the 11th century sky, a mechanical heart beating to the rhythm of flowing water. Completed in 1092, this was not merely a timekeeper, it was a celestial engine. Its intricate bronze gears and wheels were driven by a constant stream of water, but the true stroke of genius was its escapement. This device, a kind of mechanical gate, regulated the flow of power from the water wheel, turning a relentless torrent into a series of measured, precise ticks. This steady, controlled motion drove an armillary sphere, a model of the heavens that rotated in perfect sync with the actual stars and planets. It powered a globe that mapped the earthly world, and at the front of the tower, a procession of automated figures emerged from behind doors to ring bells and announce the passing hours. The entire system was driven by an endless power transmitting chain drive, a clever loop of links that efficiently transferred energy through the tower's many levels, a mechanism that would not appear in the West for hundreds of years. What is truly staggering is that we know the intimate details of this machine not from legend, but from Su Song's own book, the Xin Yi Zhang Fa Yao. He left behind detailed technical drawings, a complete blueprint of its gears, shafts, and water-driven mechanisms. This was engineering, not folklore. The tower represented a perfect fusion of astronomy and mechanics, a physical model of the cosmos that ran on schedule. Yet within decades, this marvel was dismantled and moved, its secrets fading as the political winds shifted. The knowledge to build such a device, a pinnacle of medieval engineering that rivaled the complexity of anything Europe would produce for centuries, simply dissolved back into the soil. The clock tower stands in history as a fleeting moment of technological perfection, a path that was opened with breathtaking brilliance, then allowed to quietly close. The mountains of Spain still bear the scars of a Roman hunger for gold, a hunger so vast it required the power of entire rivers to satisfy. Far from the delicate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, this was technology on a brutal geological scale. To feed the endless demand of their empire, Roman engineers transformed the landscape itself using a method known as hushing. They did not simply dig for gold, they washed whole mountains away. The process began with the same engineering genius that built their famous aqueducts. They channeled water from distant rivers into massive, high-altitude reservoirs carved into the hills above a suspected mineral vein. When the reservoir was full, the engineers would open a sluice gate, releasing a catastrophic tidal wave of water down the mountainside. This wasn't a gentle flow, it was a calculated deluge, a wall of water and debris with the force to strip away acres of soil, trees, and rock. The torrent scoured the land down to the bedrock, exposing the precious quartz veins that held the gold. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder described this very process, watching as these artificial floods laid the earth bare for the miners who followed. The scale of these operations is almost impossible to overstate. At sites like Los Medulas, the Romans moved an estimated 500 million cubic feet of earth and rock. To put that in perspective, that is like removing a solid mountain of rock weighing over 100 million tons. They created a man-made canyon, a stark, beautiful, and terrifying monument to their industrial power. This was not a handful of workers with pickaxes. It was a systematic, organized assault on the earth, employing thousands of people and requiring a level of logistics and hydraulic management that would not be seen again until the California gold rush of the 19th century. The environmental impact was permanent, reshaping entire ecosystems. Yet within that destruction lies a profound truth about Roman capability. This was not random destruction, it was applied physics on a grand scale, a cold, efficient understanding of water pressure and erosion harnessed for a single purpose. It forces us to see the ancient world not just through its temples and theaters, but through its vast, open pit mines, where the relentless pursuit of wealth drove an industrial revolution 2,000 years before the modern era. The Delhi Pillar is not an isolated miracle, but rather the most visible symbol of a vast and sophisticated metallurgical tradition. Ancient Indian texts like the Arthashastra, written around 300 years before the Common Era, read like rigorous engineering manuals. They detail precise quality control methods for metals and alloys, outlining systematic procedures for testing and classification that feel remarkably modern in their approach. This was not a craft of random experimentation, but a codified science. At the heart of this tradition was the production of Wootz steel, the very same material that would centuries later become the legendary Damascus sword. But in India, this was a homegrown technology perfected over generations. The process began in sealed clay crucibles, where iron was melted together with specific carbon-rich materials like wood or leaves. These sealed pots were then heated for hours, sometimes days, at a carefully controlled temperature, allowing the carbon to dissolve evenly into the iron, creating a high-carbon steel ingot of exceptional purity. The true artistry, however, came next. The blacksmiths employed a masterful series of heat treatments, repeatedly heating and then hammering the steel at just the right moment in its cooling cycle. This precise thermal cycling manipulated the metal's internal crystalline structure on a microscopic level, forcing the carbon to form into the very nanowires and nanotubes that modern science has only recently identified. The result was a material with a perfect marriage of properties, a steel that could be sharpened to a razor's edge yet would not chip or break in battle. This was not a secret confined to a single village. It was a major export industry. Historical records show that these Wootz steel ingots were traded across the known world, reaching the Roman Empire where they were highly prized by their own master smiths. The existence of such a systematic and widespread metallurgical science, one that could engineer materials at the nanoscale 2,000 years ago, forces a profound question. How much of this deep, practical knowledge of matter itself was simply lost when these great industrial and cultural centers eventually faded from their peak? We are left with a handful of rust-free monuments and legendary swords, mere echoes of a material science that in many ways still surpasses our own understanding. Those clay jars from Baghdad were not a one-off discovery. Similar vessels have been unearthed at other Mesopotamian sites, hinting that this was more than a curious anomaly. It was a recognized, if rare, technological practice. The real proof, however, comes from the hands of modern experimenters. When researchers connect several of these replica batteries in a series, the effect is undeniable. The combined voltage climbs, easily reaching levels sufficient for a practical task like electroplating. A gentle but persistent current flows, capable of depositing a thin, even layer of gold or silver onto a less precious metal. This is no longer just a theory, it is a demonstrable function. The evidence doesn't stop at the laboratory. Archaeologists have closely examined exquisitely gilded artifacts from the same era and region. On some pieces, the gold layer is so perfectly uniform and microscopically thin that it defies the traditional fire gilding method, which used toxic mercury and often left a telltale hammered texture. Instead, the bond appears seamless, a hallmark of an electrochemical process. If this interpretation holds, the implications are staggering. It means that a working understanding of basic electrical circuits, of chemical energy conversion, was present in the workshops of the ancient world. This knowledge would then have been lost, lying dormant for nearly 2,000 years before European scientists like Galvani and Volta began their own pioneering experiments with frogs' legs and piles of metal. The Baghdad Batteries were not magic, they were machinery, a quiet spark of genius that flickered in the darkness long before the age of electricity truly began. While the Greeks are celebrated for philosophy and art, their mastery extended deep into the earth beneath the very floors of their grandest temples. At the Temple of Ephesus, archaeologists uncovered not just foundations, but the bones of a forgotten comfort, a central heating system of stunning sophistication. This was the hypocaust, a technology we often credit to the Romans, but which the Greeks were already perfecting. The principle was one of elegant efficiency. A furnace, constantly tended, would generate hot air and gases. Instead of letting this precious heat vanish up a simple chimney, it was channeled through a network of hollow spaces, flues meticulously constructed beneath the raised marble floors and inside the hollow walls of the temple. The entire building became a radiator, its stone surfaces warming evenly to drive the chill from vast, cavernous spaces. This was not a primitive fire in a corner. It was a systemic application of thermodynamics, a deep understanding of how heat rises and how to circulate air for maximum effect. The Romans would later adopt and scale this technology for their legendary bathhouses and luxurious villas, but the Greek origins reveal a much earlier grasp of the principles. The fuel efficiency alone is something a modern engineer would admire, achieving even heat distribution across large areas with a minimal waste of energy. This knowledge of controlled climate would not become standard again until the 19th century, a gap of over 2 millennia. We are left to wonder how different the Dark Ages might have been if the gentle, pervasive warmth of the hypocaust had never faded from memory. Zhang Heng's brilliant seismoscope was not an isolated wonder, but the centerpiece of a vast, state-run scientific endeavor. For centuries after his invention, Chinese dynastic historians maintained an unbroken tradition of meticulous record-keeping, documenting earthquakes with a clinical precision that feels startlingly modern. The Bamboo Annals and other official court histories did not simply note that the earth had shaken. They logged the precise year, month, and day, the exact location of the epicenter, and detailed descriptions of the effects from collapsed buildings to altered river courses. This created the world's longest continuous seismic record, a priceless dataset spanning millennia. This was not passive documentation. It was active data collection on a grand scale, enabling a form of early statistical analysis. By studying these patterns over generations, scholars could identify regions of recurring risk, discerning cycles that helped them anticipate where the next great tremor might strike. This profound understanding was then translated into life-saving action. In seismically active zones, architects and engineers developed specialized building techniques, using flexible wooden frameworks and mortise and tenon joints that allowed structures to sway and absorb shock rather than splinter. They established elaborate beacon tower systems along fault lines, where watchmen could signal the outbreak of a distant quake faster than a horse could ride, giving downstream communities precious moments of warning. This represents a complete, integrated system, a holistic approach to disaster management that connected advanced instrumentation, rigorous data science, and practical public policy. It was a recognition that surviving nature's fury required more than a single device. It demanded a civilization-wide commitment to observation, memory, and resilient design. In this ancient system, we see the clear blueprint for our own modern efforts in seismology and disaster preparedness, a powerful reminder that the deepest technological wisdom often lies not in a single flash of genius, but in the patient collective work of generations. These scattered sparks of genius were not born in isolation. To understand how such diverse technologies emerged across continents and centuries, we must trace the invisible threads that connected them, the complex networks of knowledge exchange that wove the ancient world together. Long before the internet, ideas traveled on foot, on horseback, and on the decks of wooden ships. The legendary Silk Road was far more than a conduit for silk and spices. It was a highway for the mind. Along its dusty trails, caravans carried not only goods but also blueprints, mathematical concepts, and stories of mechanical wonders from China to the Mediterranean. A metallurgical technique perfected in an Indian workshop could find its way to a Syrian swordsmith, while an astronomical chart from Babylon might inform a Greek philosopher. This exchange was not limited to land. Across the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean, monsoon winds-powered house laden with knowledge. Maritime routes linked the ports of East Africa, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia, creating a fluid network where shipbuilders, navigators, and inventors could share and refine their crafts. But these routes needed destinations, great centers where knowledge could be collected, challenged, and combined. The Library of Alexandria was perhaps the most famous, a universal archive designed to hold all the world's literature, where scholars from across the Hellenistic world pored over texts from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. Far to the east, Nalanda University in India flourished as a monastic and intellectual powerhouse, attracting thousands of students from China, Korea, and Central Asia to study everything from medicine and logic to metaphysics and grammar. Its vast libraries were said to have burned for months when it was finally destroyed. Later, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad became the epicenter of a global intellectual movement. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, it employed a small army of scholars to translate the entire known corpus of Greek, Persian, and Indian science into Arabic, preserving works that would have otherwise been lost to Europe and creating a new, synthesized body of knowledge that would fuel advances for centuries. This global interconnectedness, though slow and fragile by our standards, created a fertile ground for innovation. A mathematical principle discovered in one culture could solve an engineering problem in another. A lost technology in one land might be common practice halfway across the world. This constant, slow-motion conversation between distant civilizations challenges our simplest stories of isolated genius and linear progress. It suggests that the brilliance we find so mysterious was often the product of a collective human project, a conversation that spanned millennia, only parts of which we have managed to overhear.